Hey y'all, welcome to episode 1 of Cocktails with Christoph. My name is Christoph Dornemann. I'm the head bartender at Arnaud's French 75 bar in the French Quarter. This show is going to be basically me teaching you classic cocktails once a week and how to make them and just some fun little facts about them. So I'm going to start with an old fashioned. It's one of my favorite things to drink. There are hundreds of old-fashioned variations, but I'm just going to start with kind of a simple classic whiskey old-fashioned the way we make it at Arnaud's and the way I like to make it. So you don't need any fancy bar tools for this. You're just going to need a glass. I'm going to use a jigger, but you can use measuring spoons, and then we'll go over the ingredients in a second. So an old-fashioned is not a specific cocktail. It is more of a specific set of ingredients. So it's just bitters, sugar, and booze. You can kind of use any bitters you want, any booze you want, any sweetener you want, but I'm going to get into all those later. So first we're going to start with 4 dashes of bitters. Extra in there. I'm going to do 4 big dashes, so sometimes not as much is going to come out of the bottle. And then you're going to add a 1/4 ounce, or what would be a little more than a teaspoon of sweetener. And then I'm going to add my bourbon. I'm going to do 2 ounces or 4 tablespoons of bourbon. You just build it all right in the glass there. Once you have everything in your glass, you can kind of give it a little stir with whatever spoon you have, and you can add your ice. And once I add the ice, I'm going to stir the drink about 10 times. And actually, at this point, you're pretty much done with the drink. Now, if you have, let me taste it. All right, that's good. If you have an orange or a lemon laying around, if you want to bring your old-fashioned up a little extra level, you can take a vegetable peeler and peel a nice big twist from your orange. Express those orange oils in there. And if you're lucky enough to have Luxardo cherries, I would not use those red maraschino cherries, but if you have a nice Luxardo cherry, you can put that in there. And I always recommend to finish the cherry after you're done with the drink. So, cheers to your old fashioned. So I mentioned earlier that an old fashioned is not a specific cocktail, and that's because it is really derived from what the original definition of what a cocktail is, which is sugar, bitters, and booze. So eventually, when all these other ingredients were starting to be used in cocktails like juice, liqueurs, herbs, things like that, what somebody would do, they would go to the bar and they would order a cocktail made the old-fashioned way. And that meant that they wanted just bitter, sugar, and booze. So that eventually evolved into people going to bars and ordering an old-fashioned the way you do now. So let's go into all the components to what makes an old-fashioned. So let's start with bitters. So I am using a blend of Angostura and Peychaud bitters. That's what we do at Arnaud's, and I really love it. So start with Angostura. Angostura bitters, Peychaud bitters, and orange bitters are the most likely bitters that you're going to be able to find at your local grocery store or online. Angostura bitters has baking note, like baking spice flavor, so your cloves, cinnamon, allspice, that kind of thing. There's a lot more that goes into it, but those are the essential flavors that you're getting from Angostura. And Peychaud has sort of a cherry anise flavor. It's a lot less bitter than Angostura. So the combination of the two gets this really complex amount of flavor that works really well with any old-fashioned that you make. Then we have your sweetener. So I make a very special sweetener, but you can do honey. A lot of recipes have sugar cubes. You can do simple syrup, cane syrup, agave, any kind of sweetener that you prefer, you can use. I make a special old-fashioned syrup where I mix different sugars and cook it with orange zest, so that's why I don't add orange bitters to my old-fashioned. Now we have the booze. So a lot of people are going to assume that an old-fashioned is going to be whiskey, but you can use any booze that you'd like. Any aged spirit specifically. So rum, scotch, brandy, añejo tequila all make delicious old fashions. So you don't have to stick with whiskey. I would not make a gin old fashioned or a vodka old fashioned, but to each their own. To, let's say, tequila old fashioned, I'll change up my sweetener and maybe my bitters. So I will use agave for a tequila old fashioned, maybe some mole bitters. For rum, I'll do cane syrup and maybe tea spice bitters, but it's really whatever you'd like. It's all going to taste good. So here's to drinking cocktails the old-fashioned way. Cheers.